Welcome to Trauma Recovery Anonymous. My name is Richard and I am your host. As you know, I'm a Christian recovery coach, and not everyone is au fait with God, and many people in church hurt and they find it very hard to embrace that concept. And from my own perspective, I really feel that people who have suffered with trauma, and if they have lost a kind of a contact with the source, with the creator, when they suffer with grief, it's something like a permanent case where they can never let go of the grief they suffered for life. Because they haven't got this idea they can give it to God and God can take it from them and look after their lost loved one or something. They feel as though they have to carry it forever. And so in my journey, as much as I try and get people who can offer words of hope for recovery, I also like to find guests who can kind of teach a different perspective on grief or a way of handling grief or dealing with grief that can help people to move on from the loss of a loved one, but also even to move on from a past trauma, to find some way of breaking free of that terminal sense of grief that overpowers them and destroys their lives because they're not able to be present for those around them because they're so stuck in the grief. And today, without any exception, I have Victoria Volk. Is that pronounced correctly, Volk?
Yes. Yep.
Victoria is a grief counsellor. She has a different perspective to dealing with grief. And looking at her profile, she's just the kind of guest I want to have on my show. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Victoria to introduce herself, give us a kind of idea of where she came from. And then as we go, I'll jump in occasionally with the odd question. But Victoria, the floor is yours. Please share your experience, strength, and hope and wisdom. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. I grew up in I'm in rural North Dakota. I've lived here my entire life in the area, and I'm a mom of 3 nearly adult children. My youngest she just left for her last day of junior year, so she's got 1 more year of high school, and one just graduated college. One is got 2 years left of college, and so I'm kind of on the cusp of that empty nest path. And so that's exciting and also a little sad, at times there's grief with that. But yeah, my childhood was one of a lot of chaos and emotional turbulence, emotional instability. Lost my father when I was 8 to cancer. He had been sick for about 16 months. He was stage 4 when he was diagnosed with colon cancer. And so I was kind of shuffled around from house to house, family to family, because I was the youngest of 4. And there was a 5-year age gap between me and my brother. So, he was a teenager kind of running off doing his own thing. And so that's kind of where that left me, was kind of with just whomever could take me while my dad was going through treatments and trying to fight it and whatnot. And actually in the year before that, my mother had lost her mother to cancer. So she was already really emotionally taxed, I think, at that point. And so losing my father, that was just another rock in her backpack, so to speak, as we collect rocks of events in our lives that we carry. Like you said, we carry it with us. It's grief that we carry with us. Trauma is what happens. Grief is what's left. And I had plenty of that in my childhood. And I was going into after my father passed and going into my teen years, I had been sexually abused by a family friend. And so it's like it didn't stop. And then going into my young adult years, that weight I had been carrying contributed to me using alcohol as a crutch. Once I discovered the bar, it was definitely one of my vices in order to cope. I was able to hold a job. I had a roommate. I lived in an apartment. Although I was tardy a lot from work or, late, probably should have been fired. Almost lost my license. I had so many speeding tickets and fender benders. And so I just want to illustrate how grief can manifest in our lives, not necessarily not necessarily in our bodies, but in our lives, right? We don't connect. I wasn't connecting my behaviors and my choices to the grief that I hadn't addressed. I had also just around that time with alcohol and stuff, I had ended a 5-year relationship. So there was it was like one thing after another. And I really did not address my grief until 2019. I mean, it took me 30 years to really connect those dots for myself. I call myself a slow learner, I guess. It's like I had to come to that conclusion myself that grief was my problem. And what am I going to do to fix it? What am I going to do? Not fix me, but, well, and actually I went into that, I had that mindset, right? I'm going to fix me. I'm going to figure out what's wrong with me, because once I had my kids, children can bring up every insecurity we have about ourselves. And so back came the alcohol I was using to cope. To actually, my daughter, my 19-year-old, and I just had a conversation not that long ago. She shared with me that she remembered going to the bar every weekend and coming home and being unavailable the rest of the week. Like Sunday, I was like incapacitated, like don't leave me alone. Right. Because I was hungover. I would be cooking my kids dinner and I would be drinking wine. Right. And I would justify there's only 4 glasses of wine in a bottle. Yeah, I'm drinking a bottle, but there's only 4 glasses in a bottle. Now, I wouldn't have considered myself an alcoholic, but I would consider myself as a binge drinker and someone that didn't have control of it. So whether you define that as an alcoholic or not, I didn't need it all day, but it was like the stress of life, the stress of motherhood, that's how I coped. Any kind of stress. So I ended up I had a come to Jesus moment with myself. That was I think that was in 2020, where it was 2019. I think it was 2019. I'd actually just gone through grief recovery, addressed my grief. Grief recovery is an evidence-based program to recover from grief, and you work on your most difficult relationship or relationships. But going into it as someone who wanted to do that work, my experience was a little different than those that I take it through, because I take my clients through, it's 12 sessions, right? Well, when you go to be a trainer, or not a trainer, but when you go to be a facilitator of the program, it's like drinking from a fire hose. You're doing traditionally it's one relationship you work on, and that's like a 9-week program, right? So I do it, when you go as a facilitator, you do it in 4 days. So it is, and the meat of the program is actually 2. So you're drinking from a fire hose. It is like an emotional, I can't even explain it. It's not for everybody. But at the time, it's what I needed, and I'm glad I did it, and I don't regret it one bit. And I'm a huge proponent of the program because of what it's done for me. So after I went through that, I realized that I needed to address my relationship with alcohol, because it is a relationship. We are in relationship with people, but we're also in relationship with money, with our physical bodies, with our inner child, all these intangible type things that also cause us grief. And I just decided to quit drinking cold turkey for an entire year and see how that felt and what that did for me. And now I can drink 1 or 2 and I'm okay. And actually, I don't even really drink anymore. So it's the emotional stuff is the resistance is where we need to be persistent, because that's where the healing is. Wherever we're feeling resistance, that's where the healing is.
Lovely. Thank you very much for sharing so much in such a short space of time. I'm a recovering alcoholic. I'm 38 years sober this year, going to my 39th year.
Congratulations.
Yeah. My cousin, who was worse drinker than me, absolutely drinking under the table. Like, it was insane the amount of alcohol she could put away. She went to a different treatment center where they taught her to just not be dependent. A peculiar kind of systems, different to AA, where you just choose not to be dependent, and you live with it, and you can have the odd glass of wine. So she'll have the odd glass of wine now, and it's like, you can't believe it's the same person. And this woman was drinking on this table to be always drunk, and now she's able to go to parties, have a glass of wine or a spritzer, and not go the whole hog. It's like, I want to go to that treatment center. Like, there's something. So we're not all the same, and I love what you said about that. Grief can present itself in so many very different ways. That I was the alcoholic, you weren't the alcoholic. You drank on your grief, but it was a different form of drinking. It may have the same results as the alcoholic drinking for the effect of drink. But I can understand for you is different, and I can understand for you, like my cousin today. She's never went back drinking, but she'll have a glass of wine or a spritzer. And it baffled me for years that this woman could drink me under the table. I mean, a whole family said, if I'm an alcoholic, Rich is an alcoholic, so-and-so is a chronic, no chance ever coming back. She's like 12 times binge, 12 times chronic alcoholic, all put together as one. And yet she's able to be a normal human being, married now, has children, has grandchildren, works in volunteer organizations, helps people all over. And when there's a barbecue or something, she can have a glass of wine or she can have a spritzer. And there's no kind of, no, if I have one drink, you better lock your daughters up and throw away the key, So thank you for your share and for honesty. And it really is amazing you've come so far. And then, but what I like to talk to people about is that we go from the victim to survivor to victor, and then, like yourself, we become the helper. And not everyone gets to become a helper, but the goal really is to walk in the shoes of Jesus, to become a helper ourselves. And to see you doing that yourself with 3 grown daughters and raising a full home and dealing with all that, and you're able to become a helper. It really is powerful, Victoria, to share this with the audience. And please continue. I didn't want to jump in for too long, but please continue. I want to just acknowledge what you've shared so far.
Thank you. Two things I think that are important to mention too is that, losing my father and all this emotional turbulence and unrest and lack of, loss of safety and security as a child, really had me turning away from God. And after my father died, we didn't go to church anymore. And I didn't set foot into a church until a classmate of mine had gotten married. And so that was for our wedding, right? I was very angry at God, and I would say that I was spiritually sick. And what happened was I was kind of my lowest low when this is at the time when I was really using alcohol. I knew every drink special every night of the week. And I was in that, relationship that should have ended 3 years sooner. And I did end up and I did end that relationship. And what came of that was me saying a prayer. Actually, it was a prayer. First time I had prayed in probably ever. And I just asked God, I'm like, send someone my way who is good for me. And my husband, actually not long after that, my husband, who had been a friend of mine for 7 years, just started pursuing me relentlessly. And we're 23 years. He's the father of my children. So it's really bizarre how the world works, how God works, how, when we ask, when we surrender, and, but also move our feet, right? Because moving my feet part didn't happen until, like I said, 2019 when I was 40. But what happened was 5 years before that, so around 2014, my youngest was starting kindergarten, and I had a photography business for about 10 years. And I was kind of getting to the point where I knew I had to close that business for something else to come in. I had started blogging. I'd started writing about kind of this spiritual journey I was taking. And I knew that I didn't want to be a photographer forever. Like I was meant for more, or there was something more I needed to do, or somewhere else I needed to be in my life. And I closed that business. My youngest started in kindergarten, and I just had this midlife unraveling that my identity was like, who am I? Like, who am I? Why am I here? Midlife crisis when I was like, how old would I have been? Like 36, 35, something like that. Yeah, 35. And so that led me down taking, and at the same time, coincidentally, or not coincidentally, I started having physical manifestations. So my grief was really coming back. I started having pain all over. I was losing weight. My hair was falling out. I became really anemic. I've always been anemic, but it was just getting worse. My self-care was completely in the toilet. I would go 2 to 3 days without showering. It did not bother me. And granted, too, after having my last child, I did struggle with postpartum, but did not talk to a soul about that. So it was always like this roller coaster, but always thinking that there was something wrong with me that I needed to fix. And so I took every personality test known to man. I can tell you my Myers-Briggs. I can tell you my Clifton Strengths. Like, you throw an assessment at me, Enneagram, I'm a 7. Like, I know it all because I've taken them all, because I always thought, like I said, it's like, I always thought that if I could just fix myself. My perspective of that now is this: the more you know yourself, the less you look to others to tell you who you are. And I really was what I didn't know I was doing at the time was putting myself on a path to really understanding myself. Like, how did I get here? And looking at the past and reassessing my life choices, my decisions I've made, recognizing patterns, connecting those dots for myself. So all of those assessments and all of those personal development classes and the self-help books I was reading just really helped me become informed about me. And ultimately is what led me to, actually, I had another loss in my life, and a friendship that kind of fell away. And so that's really when I was like, there's something to this grief here. It's really, this is the crux. This is like the hinge pin of my progress and me actually recognizing and meeting my own potential. And so that's really 2019, January 2019. Actually, it was like the end of 2018. I went to Google, and that's how I found grief recovery. And my life has not been the same since. It completely changed how I parent my kids. I say it I've actually said it to my kids recently that the only area of my life I don't feel like I am a complete failure is with my kids. And it's because of the personal work that I've done. I know that if I died tomorrow, my kids with the good heads on their shoulders, they would be okay. And that's good enough for me. Like that's yeah. But it wouldn't have been that way had I continued on that path I was on, right? Like, had I not recognized that grief was my issue, that the past was dictating the present and all of that. Yeah.
Victoria, I want to just touch on two things. I'm loving this. I'd not interrupt you if I could, but there's two things I really want to stress. One is Victoria shared at the depths of her despair, and in a broken relationship, she prayed. And again, you don't know it's going to work until you try it. But she prayed for some solution, and voila, it happened. Prayer is powerful. Prayer can change your situation if you do chance prayer. The only thing I would say to you is pray on his terms, not on your terms. He's not a go get you God. He won't like turn up for today and then leave you alone for the rest of the time. You have to kind of form an ongoing relationship with him. But if you ask him sincerely to like Victoria did, to do something for you, he will do it if you commit to that relationship with him. And the second one was later on, you spoke about not keeping secrets. I think that's a very big part of it. It's not so much telling a therapist, because and no offense against therapists, but you pay them for your time. You pay them to take care of you, and they'll listen to you all day long. Your family, you don't pay, and your family wants you to get well. So the family will use tough love, and they won't play the game of listening to you and let you to bitch and moan. But take a chance on telling your family, especially your parents. If you're having a bad day, go to your mum or dad and say, I feel very anxious and I want to run away and hide. I don't want you to fix or save me, but how do you cope with anxiety? And then your mum says, well, I would do chores, I would wash the car, I would cut the grass, I go for a walk. And you copy what she does. And if it works, you add it to your arsenal, your new arsenal of coping skills. So learn to ask your parents, especially if your parents first, because you may not realize it, but your parents chose to start a family, and you're their chosen one, their child, and you're their future, and they want you to be successful, and they won't go easy on you. They're trying to toughen you up so you can handle life. So it's kind of a tough love they're giving you, but it's coming from the bottom of their hearts. So don't be afraid to go to your mum or dad and say, I feel really scared, I feel really anxious, I feel really depressed, I want to give up in life. How do you deal with your anxiety or depression? And whatever they say, try it. And they may give you A, B, and C. You like A and you don't like B and C, add A to your arsenal. Then go to your dad and ask him, and he gives you X, Y, Z, and you like X and Y, you don't like Z. Now you have A, X, and Y. Then you go to your granny and they give you hers, and it's M and O, and you use M and O, and so on. And you build up an arsenal of coping skills, so you don't longer stay stuck in the feeling. Now you're taking some form of action. Victoria, back to you. I just wanted to throw those in if I could.
Yeah, and to piggyback that, my mother was not a safe person for me. She was not a safe space for me. So for those listening who feel like their parents are not that for them, then I suggest finding a coach or finding a mentor. Coaches are great, like coaches in sports and mentors. Like sometimes
favorite teacher,
favorite teacher, somebody. But I think we are not taught to be emotionally honest. We're not taught to I was listening to a podcast recently, and this woman was talking, just giving examples, off the cuff of all the things that we don't say in a day. And it's not to have diarrhea of the mouth where we say every thought we're thinking, right? Yeah. But it's let's say you have an encounter with your postmaster. You dropped a package off and you really liked her blouse, but you didn't tell her. Or you, see that they're not feeling their energy seems down, they seem down, and you walked away and you left but you never asked, are you okay? And so it's that eats at you, right? That's just an emotional thing that you hold on to. I wish I would have asked them how they're doing, or I wish, and I'm recognizing that more when I'm trying to be more cognizant of that when I'm having a thought, especially of concern, or if I'm just thinking about someone, to actually reach out. And I did that recently, actually, with I noticed that this person was not looking good, looking like they were unwell. And I reached out and they said, "Thank you for noticing." It was a guy, right? How many men have someone reach out to them? I think it's probably more so men, right? People aren't reaching out to men. How are you? Are you okay? Thank you for noticing, he said. And so I felt good that I did what I felt in my heart and I acted on it. And so when you have those inklings, act on those, because when you don't, that's emotion, that's energy you're holding on to in your body too.
Excellent. That's a lovely thing. There's a Christian idea where when you're walking down the street, you shoot prayers at people.
I love that.
Loud. Just when you see somebody, look, God bless you to Victoria, God bless you to whoever it is. Silently to yourself, you're just sending a prayer to somebody. God bless, God bless, God bless. I wish you well, God bless. What it does is you're sending actual energy to the person, and they will pick up on the energy. You might see them looking around at you and looking, you're wondering, what was that? But it will fill your soul and your heart inside of you with love and kindness and empathy, simply by shooting prayers at perfect strangers. See an old lady walking and carrying a bag, or a shopkeeper, the postmaster wearing the new blouse, or someone looking like they're having a bad day. God bless you, keep you safe. God send a host of angels to take that person. Just send prayers. For now, just shoot prayers at people. You may not be religious, you may not be a member of a denomination. Just make a decision on your own. You're going to shoot 20 prayers today, maybe 30 prayers tomorrow, and see what it feels like after you send prayers. I think it's lovely that you ask somebody how they're feeling. We don't do that enough. We let people suffer around us. You see an elderly lady offer to carry your bags. You see someone standing on a bus, even if they're not pregnant, offer them your seat. There's times when we'll do something for somebody, and that's the difference between them giving up on life or not. They're thinking they're completely lost, no one cares, and suddenly a stranger says, here, take my chair, or can I carry those bags for you? And that moment you could be saving a life and you don't even know it. So shooting prayers is a very simple one you can do. If you're feeling very nervous and you're socially anxious and you're not really good at connecting or talking to people, in your mind, just shoot prayers. Victoria, back to you. Sorry, thank you.
No, I love that idea. I love that. Actually, what I didn't mention too is that when my husband came back into my life more than a friend, I actually became a convert. So I hadn't been going to church, like I said, and he was a very faithful man and Christian, and so that's really been the foundation of our marriage and our life and raising our kids. And so yeah, it was something I had to grow into that. I had to come to that decision on my own. He didn't pressure me, he didn't force me or anything like that. And I think that's important. You can't want it more than the other person. Like, they need to want it for themselves. And that's true for healing. That's true for a spiritual life. That's true for their own life, right? That's you gotta want it. You gotta want it more than anybody else wants it for you.
That's beautiful. I love that. I love the fact that your husband gave you the freedom to decide whether you want it or not. I'm an advocate for the Christian belief system. I'm not a member of any denomination, church, or man-made religion. I was raised a Roman Catholic, became disillusioned with that faith. I tried Baptist, Protestant, Anglican, Presbyterian, and just for me, they didn't work. I know they work for many, many people, and I'm not saying don't do church or don't join a denomination, because if it works for you, go for it. For me, my AA is my church. I know people, you say that, people don't say it, but the fellowship of AA is my church. It's somewhere I go and I meet people like me who have been down the same road I've been down. And there's a great sense of camaraderie and fellowship sitting in a meeting for an hour that Christians get when they go to church together and they sit praising the Lord for an hour together. But the church never worked for me. I'm not knocking it in any way. I have my Bible. I listen to a range of spiritual teachers on Spotify and YouTube that really resonate with me. And they really give me a great sense of understanding. And I've got my books from the library. I've got a whole collection of books from, especially writers back in the 1900s. There was a huge number of evangelists back then. Really fantastic guys, Joseph Murphy, Emmett Fox. These guys who were tremendous carriers, Norman Vincent Peale. I could go on and mention all these guys. And their books are profoundly beautiful when they share quite simply how it is to let God into your life. There's so many of them out there that I think it's trying to let children know that they are, I tell people, we are all children of God, perfect exactly as we are, with all our defects and shortcomings, all our doubts and insecurities. Others can do what we can do, but nobody can do what we can do with our energy. That's what makes us so unique and so special. God doesn't make mistakes, and all of creation has made one mistake. It's not starting with you or I. We were created for meaning and purpose, and there is a meaning and purpose for our lives, and we're meant to move mountains. So if you're lost and your church hurt and you don't want to join any religion, try shooting prayers at people and see how that feels, just for a while.
Yeah, and they say that the fastest way to get your mind and heart and energy off of your own pain and sorrow and despair is to direct it towards others, to help others. You can't be thinking about yourself when you're helping someone else, right?
Perfect. So tell me more about your grief. How do you what's your perspective on grief and how you deal with grief? As I'd love to talk about that if possible.
Oh, absolutely. And actually, I'll share a definition of grief that probably you or maybe others have never heard.
Okay.
So in grief recovery, I learned that grief is the loss of hopes, dreams, and expectations. It's anything that you wish would have been or could be different, better, or more. So if we think about that definition of grief, that's a lot. And it's no one has to die for us to grieve, as I touched on before. Loss of safety and security as a child. There's immense grief in that. I don't know if you're familiar with the ACE studies. The ACE study, ACEs, adverse childhood experiences.
No, I haven't. If
you had an incarcerated parent, if you had a parent that struggled with mental illness, if you had a parent that was in an abusive relationship, if your parents divorced, if you had a parent that died, if you didn't have biological parents, you were put in the system. These are all ACEs. And actually, the recent statistic I heard is that 1 in 6 adults have 4 or more ACEs, and or adverse childhood experiences, and they have directly correlated and linked ACEs to and stress and anxiety in adulthood. I would say it's grief. That was the one thing I found frustrating about this podcast episode that was all about ACEs and adverse childhood experiences, is that the word grief was never used. It was described as stress and anxiety. And I'm like, it's grief. It's just manifesting as stress and anxiety, right? It's actually grief because, so many people are just walking around with these childhoods in them that they've never, that they feel like, oh, that was in the past. I don't have to look at that. It's not affecting me. Meanwhile, back at the ranch, they're choosing partners that are repeating the patterns of their parent who was maybe an alcoholic or maybe abusive or maybe emotionally dysregulated or emotionally stunted, wasn't emotionally mature themselves or whatever. So they choose parents. We tend to choose parents, right, that are like our parents. Because we look at those characteristics, right? Like the patterns, the generational patterns, this is why generational patterns continue, is because we always resort to what we know. So unless we're taught differently, unless we gain new knowledge, unless we seek out the information or are open to new information and new knowledge, we will always resort to what we know. And what we know about grief is typically not hurt. It's harmful and often hurtful, right? Because we all resort to these myths of grief. I don't care, black, brown, white, Christian, not Christian, Muslim, whatever. There's no discrimination with grief. We all experience it, and we all experience it at 100%. So these myths that we all resort to, keeping busy, replacing the loss. We all know that adage, time heals all wounds, right? We've all heard that. Be strong. I was listening to another podcast, this gentleman, it wasn't even about grief, and he described an experience he had as a child where he was told at his I think it was his father's funeral, you need to be strong for your mom. He's an 11 or 12-year-old kid at the time. And so he internalized that. And he never let his grief or his pain show because he had to be strong because someone told him that. We honestly learn how to respond to life. 75%, by the age 3, we've already learned 75% of how to respond to life by age 3. So our brains are just like sponges, and we take in, it's all data. We're just taking in all this data, like how my mom responds to, or dad responds to a traffic jam. Oh, I get really angry. Well, that's what you do when you get in a traffic jam. You get angry and you get expressive and you get mad and, road rage, right? Or at the grocery store and something isn't going your way and you take it out on the cashier or whatever. Similarly, we can learn how to respond in a neutral or energetic, inactivated way. And it's not to dismiss the anger. It's not to dismiss or minimize how we're feeling. But when we all have these ACEs, right? We all at least have at least one. Typically, we all have something from our child. We all have something. Either the parent wasn't there, or we didn't receive the love that we needed, or what have you. We all have something. We are bringing that to our children. That pattern is continuing unless we recognize it, unless we take different action to rectify that pattern, that cycle will continue. I consider myself as a chain breaker. I am the generational pattern breaker in my family. I've taken on that role. I felt like that was my calling in my family lineage because growing up, I heard so many stories. Because when my father passed away, actually, I not only lost him, but I lost my entire family on that side. They were no longer in my life. I didn't have grandparents anymore. My mother's, like I said, my mother lost her mother, my grandmother, and her father actually died the year I was born. I had no grandparents growing up. And aunts, uncles, cousins, not in my life. So it was like complete abandonment. And I was told this story that my uncle, who was very close to my father, had said that he was going to take care of us. He was going to watch over us. And he didn't do that. He broke his promise. That was the story I heard. Well, one of the losses I experienced in the editing phase of writing my book, and when I was blogging and stuff like that, was my uncle had been diagnosed with brain cancer. And it had been almost nearly 30 years to the day since my dad had died. And again, I hadn't dealt with my grief yet. And this would have been in 2018, 17, 18. And I went to see him. I just felt like this gravitational pull is how I can describe it, to go see him. I didn't know if he would remember. He had brain cancer. I didn't know if he'd know me, remember me, want to see me. He hasn't seen me since I was 8, right? And I walk in, I knock on the door and I walk in, and it was like waterworks for both of us. And not 10 minutes later, my 2 cousins walk in from completely different states, mind you. Like, I didn't know they were going to be there. And so it's like this 30 years in the making family reunion, right? In these really terrible circumstances, right? Their father and uncle had been diagnosed with a terminal illness. And what happened, though, was I had 6 months to reconnect with him. And that was a really, truly spiritual experience, I think, for both of us. Wow. I felt like I went to see him. It was less about me and more about providing him with not closure, but maybe forgiveness. Because again, I think back to that story, and I knew there was something, I felt like there were things that he was carrying, right? He lost his brothers. They were very close. And what I experienced in that reconnection time with him was feeling closer to my father than I'd ever felt.
Wow, that's beautiful.
Yeah. So it's like, if I wouldn't have done that, if I wouldn't have taken action on that pull, that knowing in my body, I felt it in my body, I needed to do that, I would be so regretful to this day. So regretful, because I received so much healing in that experience, and I know he did too.
So lovely message. Yeah. When you get the chance to take some action, take it. There was a lady I was interviewing about grief as well, and she said, when you're feeling in the depths of despair, say yes to everything. So, when you're feeling like really, really depressed and down, and like your life's over and you can't go on, and someone says, we're going down to the beach for a swim, will you come? say yes. You want to say no. You want to just stay in the house and stay to yourself and have a good cry. But say yes to everything. Go down to the beach, go for a walk, go for a jog, clean the house, cut the grass, go for an ice cream, go shopping. Whatever is happening, always say yes to everything.
That really ended up being the catalyst of my transformation. So I discovered grief recovery because of that experience.
So take an action, and you took action. You went to see your uncle, and I can understand there'd be anger there about him letting you down, and suddenly you were able to make peace with him and give him a gift that he didn't expect he'd ever get before he died. And here he is on his deathbed. You're giving a gift and connecting with cousins, and miracles happen when we take action. If we stay on the couch at home doing nothing, the miracle can't happen. But if we have the courage to ask for help or to say yes to life, the miracles will start happening. Lovely sharing. Victoria, we're running out of time. Can you tell me about your book? Tell me a bit, maybe 3 coping skills about grief that I can share with the audience. But talk about your book first. Give us a plug in about your book.
Yeah. So it was, it'd be a very different book if I wrote it now. I even talk about like the stages of grief, which there are no stages of grief. So I'm more informed definitely now than I was when I wrote it, but it was where I was at the time, right? I was just writing about the things that were helping me at the time. And that's called the Guided Heart, Moving Through Grief and Finding Spiritual Solace. So that came out at the end of 2017. Can
I ask you, Guided Heart, a fabulous title for a book. Where did that come from? Was that from one of your daughters, or is that just something you had, or did you pray about it? It sounds like a beautiful title for a book, Guided Heart.
Well, that's what my website was called, The Guided Heart. Yeah, The Guided Heart.
And where did that come from? Where did that name come from?
It came to me.
Okay.
It literally.
I had to ask you because it's a wonderful. People look for names for their websites, their books, and it's like it's so hard to find something that really kind of jumps out. And now
my business my business now is called The Unleashed Heart.
I've heard of The Untethered Soul, Guided Heart and Unleashed Heart. Beautiful, absolutely beautiful. So continue. Sorry, I had to just give a plug.
No, that's okay. So the 3 coping, I would say, 1, be emotionally honest with yourself and others. One of the biggest gifts that you can give yourself is self-awareness. Do whatever it takes to become more self-aware, because you, like Dr. Phil says, and used to say, I don't know if he still says it, but you can't change what you don't acknowledge. Self-awareness. What was the first one I said?
Don't do this to me. Be emotional. Be emotionally.
Emotionally honest, self-awareness, and never give up hope. I feel like that's kind of one of the bigger things for me, because in growing up, I felt like I was like, why are we here? Are we just here to suffer? Like, that's what life is about, is just suffering. Like, I didn't have hope that I could even find my potential, meet my potential. That's actually one of my greatest fears for me personally, is that I'm going to die never reaching my full potential.
But I want to share one thing with you. I love the idea that you and I together having this podcast, if we even reach one soul that gets courage or some way of healing their grief and moving on, and maybe they start a family, they have children, and in 3 or 4 generations, one of their children go on to create a cure for cancer or AIDS. We won't get accolades for that, but God will know, and that's all that matters.
Yeah.
And that's why I do this. That we do this, that maybe one person will gain some hope from our words today, and some way of dealing with the grief, or making peace with a relative that you swore you'd never forgive. Like Victoria said, you go and you see her uncle that you were never going to forgive, and you give them peace. And in that moment, you have peace yourself, and you go on to change and become a helper. That's, I think, what the goal to do is go from victim to become a survivor, and realize that the younger aspect of us, that inner child we talk about, that's the victim of the event. But last month or last year, it happened to a different aspect of you. You're the survivor today. And if you can embrace the works of Victoria and break free of the trauma completely, you'll become the victor. And then from there, you can step into being a helper like Victoria and helping others. So, Victoria, it was wonderful having you on my podcast. And I hope I get maybe in 6 months or a year, I get you to come back for a follow-up. But guys, if you ever get a chance to check out The Unleashed Heart and what's the other one?
The Guided Heart.
The Guided Heart. God, forgive me. I should be.
That's
The
okay.
Guided Heart and the Unleashed Heart. Please check them out. Victoria, when this is up and running, I'll add all your details onto this episode. My son is my editor-in-chief. He's got a month off from university, but he's doing lots of online gaming. Now, to be fair to him, he uploaded 5 audios of mine last night. He's doing another 6 tonight. So in the next few days, I'll have this done. And when I get to upload it, I'll notify you. Folks, thank you very much for joining us. I really hope that you learned something from Victoria's company here tonight. Victoria, thank you very much for coming. You want to say goodbye there?
Thank you.